Hey there, pirates. Welcome aboard the Anime No Me channel. Luffy never forgets anyone, even when it seems like he does, especially not someone who touched the heart of one of his friends. It's like this wild kind of memory that only shows up when it's needed. And if there's one story that's been left hanging ever since we left Whole Cake Island, it's the Vinsmoke story. Reiju showed up, helped out, proved she was completely different from the rest of her family, and then, poof, disappeared. Sanji's brothers also left that place kind of humiliated and confused, even if they didn't show it. Since then, Germa 66 has faded from the spotlight, but there's this feeling in the air. That story isn't over. And maybe now, with Luffy awakening this insane power of the sun god, this kind of hockey that feels what's inside a person and shakes their heart, maybe the time to meet Reiju again is finally coming. What gives us that feeling? A bunch of little clues. Back in chapter 902, when Germa showed up to protect the Straw Hats' escape, you could already tell something had shifted in them. They didn't get all emotional, or cry, or make speeches, obviously, but Ichiji looked at Sanji with this skeptical expression that just felt different. Then Big Mom went off to Wano and disappeared from the scene instead of going after the Vinsmokes, and suddenly, the whole world felt like it had a gap in it. Germa's out there somewhere, and when Reiju appeared in that cover story with Caesar, everyone took notice again. Like, oh, this isn't over. So here comes the big question. What if Luffy runs into Reiju again, and she tells him the brothers are colder than ever, and that Sanji might be headed down the same path? Would Luffy, now changed, now carrying this power to make the world laugh again, be able to break that curse? See, Sanji got lucky being defective. He cried, got angry, felt everything. Reiju too, but she hides it. The other brothers, at least up through Whole Cake, were walking stones. But the world is changing. What used to be called a flaw is now called humanity. Sanji crying over everything became a symbol of someone who cares, while the brothers stayed stuck in their pride. But maybe, just maybe, Luffy is the only one who could really look at them and spark something. Because if you think about it, every time Luffy faces someone with a closed heart, something shifts. That's what happened with Law, who was all bitterness and strategy. It happened with Jinbei, who didn't want to get involved. Even with Zoro, who at first was all quiet and distant. Luffy just has this thing. He doesn't give speeches, he doesn't explain, he just is. And now, with this Nika power, this liberator of feelings energy, it seems even stronger. In chapter 1044, when Luffy fully awakens, Zunesha says, he is joy, he is laughter. That's not just about power, that's about emotion. And if Luffy can make an entire island laugh while he's fighting, maybe he really could crack through the shell that Sanji's brothers are stuck in. Imagine Ichiji, the coldest of them all, trying to hit Luffy and suddenly feeling something he's never felt before. Like, this heat from inside, this confusion, a fear that's not physical but emotional. It would be wild, but it would make perfect sense. And Reiju, who's always shown she cares about Sanji, even if she never said it out loud, maybe she's the key to this whole reunion. Because if she finds Luffy first, maybe she'll ask for help. Not like, save my brothers, but something quieter. Like, they're not okay. Sanji's not okay, and I don't know what to do. And Luffy, in his own way, without overthinking it, would just say, all right, let's go. Because he doesn't need to understand to help, he just needs to want to. And speaking of Sanji, it gets even deeper. Ever since Wano, we've seen that his biggest fear isn't losing a fight, it's losing himself. When he starts hearing those voices in his head telling him he's changing inside and he breaks the communicator in front of Zoro, that's not just fear of the past, that's fear of becoming like his brothers. And that's heavier than any hit he's ever taken. Because deep down, Sanji knows the thing that sets him apart from Germa is that he feels. And if he stops feeling, it's over. But then there's Luffy. Luffy won't let that happen, not with this new power. Because Luffy has always seen Sanji as someone important, not just for fighting, but as part of the crew's heart. And now that he's got the power of the sun god, the power to literally change the atmosphere around him, maybe he can help Sanji see that even if physical changes happen, what's inside him is still his. Still emotion, still him, and maybe even the brothers can see that too. Maybe the reunion will help both sides. Sanji remembering who he is, and the brothers learning that they can feel too if they want to. And if we think about where this could happen, there are a few possibilities. Maybe Elbath, where emotions are running high, where the giants are being corrupted by their own nightmares like we saw in the last few chapters. Maybe that's the perfect place for someone who's been hiding their feelings to realize they can't anymore. Because if even kids' dreams are turning into monsters, like we saw in chapter 11 at 51, imagine what happens when someone like Ichiji starts to dream for the first time. Or maybe it happens later, on a totally new island where Germa shows up again. Maybe they're trying to figure out what went wrong. Maybe Caesar messed with them again. Maybe Reiju's trying to stop Sanji from completely shutting down. And then Luffy shows up. with that power that changes everything. He doesn't even have to say anything. He just has to laugh, just fight in his crazy way. And suddenly, everything starts melting. The inner ice of the brothers, Sanji's fear, even Germa's pride might crack. And if that happens, maybe we'll see Sanji save his brothers. Not with kicks or explosions, but with feeling, with memory, with heart. Maybe he tells them something from the past. Maybe he says something he's never said before. And maybe, just maybe, he cries again. Because Sanji's tears have never been weakness. They've always been strength. And Luffy, laughing through it all, might just say, that's how you're supposed to be. Now that we've talked about the possibility of Luffy reuniting with Reiju, stirring her emotions, and maybe helping Sanji stay true to himself, the next question is, what happens after that? How will Sanji handle it? And what will happen to his brothers if Luffy, with the power of the Sun God, shakes the hard shell around their hearts? Alright, picture this. After the events in Elbaf, or whatever new island comes next, the Straw Hat crew runs into Reiju. But it's not a casual appearance. She doesn't show up with flowers or an invite for tea. She's all beat up, running from somewhere, saying something went really wrong with Germa. Maybe Caesar tried something else. Maybe Sanji's brothers pushed things too far, trying to get even stronger. And the worst part, maybe Sanji feels like he's heading down that same path. That's when the tension starts. Because we know that when Sanji starts doubting himself, he pulls away from everyone. But this time, Luffy's not letting that happen. He's sticking close. Not in an annoying way, but in that classic Luffy style. You're my cook. If you're sad, the food tastes bad. Boom! That's enough. Now here comes the big moment. I think that reunion with Sanji's brothers is gonna be huge. Maybe even a full-on battle. Sanji versus Ichiji, or maybe all of them. But not out of hate. More like memory. Like they're trying to force Sanji to accept that he's part of Germa, and he's standing his ground like, no, I'm part of the Straw Hat crew. That's when Luffy steps in. Not to stop the fight, but to watch. And it's different now. His power isn't just stretching and punching anymore. It's changing the whole vibe. Literally. The weather, the air, even the sound around them. And maybe that starts to affect the Vinsmokes. Like they're fighting Sanji and suddenly something feels off. A memory hits, a sound, maybe a moment from the past, their mother's smile, something old, and then something breaks. Maybe Yonji stops fighting. Maybe Niji lowers his guard. And Ichiji keeps going. He's the proudest after all, but even he starts to hesitate. Because that power Luffy has now, the Sun God thing, it's messing with their hearts. Not by force, but by revealing what's inside, what was buried. And then something totally unexpected happens. One of them cries. Not a dramatic sob, just a single tear. Subtle, but it's enough. Because that's the moment you realize the wall's been cracked. And Sanji, seeing that, might just break down. Because he never wanted to beat his brothers. He just wanted them to be different. To feel, to look at him not as a failure, but as a brother. And now, even if it's just for a second, that actually happens. And it's all thanks to Luffy, who probably doesn't even realize what he did. He was just there, with that goofy smile, hair all wild in his Nika form. And maybe he says, this is how you guys should be, like Sanji. That was today's content. We hope you liked it and want to share your opinion on the subject. Don't forget to share the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and stay amazing.